Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're going to get started here shortly. Let me talk about the most important part on a semi-truck. If you guys are joining us, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you're notified when we go live. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to be discussing the most important part on a semi, and I'll give you a hint. You got 4 of them. Let me know where you're watching from if you're joining us today. I'm going to wait for a little bit longer to get everybody joined in. Got a few things we're covering today, but I want to get in depth on the most important part on a semi-truck. Got a few things that I researched for you and I want to share. Good explanation on why it's important to check these right before winter time and why weather affects them. Let me know where you're watching from. I'm also going to ask or answer any questions that you have. So if you got any problems with your truck or issues, or if you want to come by the shop and you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, 972-225-3017. We'll be more than happy to help you out. Los Angeles is in the house. Thank you for joining us. Central Pennsylvania, thank you for joining us. We're going to get this show started here shortly. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the most important part on a semi-truck, and you'll be surprised. All right, we're going to go ahead and just get started here. Let everyone else join in. Get this background music. How you guys doing today? I'm Adam with TAT Express. Today we're going to be talking about the most important part on your semi truck, and that's going to be your battery. Now, today I want to discuss batteries because we're getting into the winter season, and I want you to understand how important batteries are, why we need so many of them, and the construction of the battery. Mostly what's used on the batteries. There's different types of batteries, but the most batteries you're going to see on your truck are going to be considered flooded batteries, which is a mixture of acid and lead plates. So batteries are pretty much just it's pretty much just chemistry, a chemistry project happening in your truck. I want to break down a few things about these batteries. So let's get this show started. Appreciate everyone that's joined us. We got Chicago in the house, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. We got the whole United States. Let's get this show started. So the first thing I want to discuss today, we're going to be talking about batteries, okay? Now I want to discuss the construction of the batteries. Hope you guys can hear me well. Let me turn this background music down a little bit so you can hear me better. Okay, so batteries are very important, and the first thing we're going to be discussing is the construction of the batteries. So I got some stuff together. I got some stuff here together for you. So we're going to start with that, and let's get started. So batteries, as I mentioned, are very important. We talked about this before, and I had a question on the channel. Somebody popped up and said, why do we have to replace the batteries within a year? Some batteries last longer than others. So as I mentioned, we're going to discuss the construction of batteries. So what we'll do here, let's start with this one. This image here. Now this is a basic image of what a battery looks like on the inside. Now these lead plates here, these are lead plates, and they are constructed and filled with acid. So there's lead plates. The lead plates you have positive plates and negative plates, and these plates, they react with sulfuric acid, and that's what creates the electricity. The electrolyte is mixed with sulfuric acid and water. Now the mixture of water is what really makes this important, because this is why weather causes so much issues and affects the batteries so much. So as I mentioned, you have positive plates and you have negative plates inside this battery, and it's filled with sulfuric acid and water. Now, the battery casing is unique as well. It has to be acid proof. It has to be able to withhold all this interior And this is why they're so heavy, because those lead plates are in there, and there's different designs and there's different ways where they help these batteries actually produce more power or last longer. So we're going to go discussing more and more about this. Now, the separation between these batteries is what keeps them from the separated plates, and the structure of the battery is what keeps them from touching each other and shorting itself out. Here's a more of a breakdown of more of an in-depth look of how batteries are constructed. So they have these grids, these lead grids that they make into mesh. They're mesh, and then they actually put this material on it, and it hardens, and then of course they put them in together like this and fill it up with acid. Most batteries that are running on trucks right now, there's different types of batteries out there, but the most that you're going to be running are going to be flooded batteries. They're considered flooded batteries because they're filled with acid. Okay, of course you got the terminals these are usually made out of lead as well. And some truck batteries, especially newer ones, there are a different style that you'll see. Now, the basic batteries you're going to see, I'm going to give you a couple examples here. This battery here is a pretty common battery. You're going to see it very often. Alliance battery. Now, and if you read what type of battery it is, now it's using EXG technology, which is for superior grid strength. Now, what this is, as I mentioned, they use different technologies to create these batteries more durable so they can create more power, last longer. Now, one problem that batteries see a lot when it comes to semis is vibration, the rough rides, all that really starts putting a damage on the batteries. Now, what this EXG technology is, it's just a different style technology where they're separating the grids even more. When I talk about grids, I'm talking about these sections so that they can actually withhold more power and become more durable. Now, there's a different style battery as well. Now, you're not going to see this battery often as much as you will see a flooded battery, because a flooded battery is basically going to be is really cheaper than it is the next battery I'm about to talk about. A more advanced battery is going to be, it's called an absorbent gel mat, which is similar to this one, but I have some images here. It's similar to this one, but the plates are put into this fiberglass mesh mat, or gel. Now, what this does is float. It floats the lead plates, and it absorbs a lot of the vibration or the rough riding that you'll have. And these batteries are actually supposed to last a lot longer than a regular flooded battery. Now, I'm not saying go to AGM batteries because they are very pricey. You can see Alliance makes an AMG battery as well. You can see here it says AMG technology, AGM technology, excuse me. Now, the AGM technology is designed to create, it basically just helps it last longer. It gives it a more of a safeguard where it's a floating plate on the inside, as I mentioned. The design is absorbed, as I mentioned, fiberglass mats is what's placed between the lead plates. It doesn't have acid filled. AMG batteries have low interval resistance, which enables them to deliver a lot of power quickly. They are well suited for applications that require high current output, such as starting large diesel engines. Durability. AGM batteries are highly resistant to vibration and can handle more cycles of discharge and recharge than traditional flooded lead batteries. AGM batteries are generally maintenance free and do not require water filling. The gel technology is what they're using on the AGM batteries. It's gel batteries. The sulfate acid is mixed with the silicon to form a gel-like substance. This thickens the electrolyte, doesn't flow, making it more resistant to spill and leakage. So these types of performance batteries will last you a lot longer, but I'm going to be upfront. I'm going to give you some more information on the EXG batteries, which is what you're seeing mostly. The flooded batteries are still really good batteries. They're really good batteries, and we're going to talk more about those. These gel batteries, they are durable as well. As I mentioned, they're resistant to vibration. They're particularly good in extreme temperatures as well. Off-road, deep cycle applications like AGM batteries, gel batteries are maintenance free. Now, some of the lead batteries, some of the acid-filled flooded batteries will claim that they are maintenance free, but we're going to discuss more why we end up seeing that. So there are benefits for an AGM battery, and a gel battery offers benefits over traditional flooded batteries, such as improved safety, lower maintenance, and enhances performance in specific conditions. However, they are typically, as I mentioned before, they cost more. So it's best to choose one based on your vehicle's specific needs. I'm not saying move over to AGM, but we're going to talk about now the choice between AGM, absorbent glass mat, or EXG flooded batteries. Now, as I mentioned, AGM batteries are the same. They're good for high demand. So are the EXG flooded batteries. They're spill proof. Now, that's the only really good thing about these is they're spill proof. So they will last you a little bit longer. But as I mentioned, you're going to be spending a lot more money. The applications for a flooded battery, they actually are durable. They last you a good long time. These are really good batteries as well. They also work well in extreme temperatures and rough environments. Enhanced conductivity due to the expanded grid structure, which improves power delivery and efficiency. Corrosion resistance design, which leads to longer lifespan. So corrosion is another thing that you, not just on the outside of the battery, but on the inside of the battery as well. Since there are lead plates on the inside, corrosion on the inside of the battery will kill it. So these are better. Liquid batteries or flooded batteries are better performance stability to extreme temperatures, especially in heat. Now, this is the flooded batteries we were talking about earlier. This is going to be the basic battery, the EXG technology. If it doesn't say AGM, most likely it's going to be a flooded battery, and that's more common on a lot of trucks. A lot of different applications use liquid flooded batteries. This is another Napa battery here. Ensure that you're getting 1,000 cranking amps when you're using these batteries, and we're going to talk here shortly about why cranking amps, high cranking amps, is so important. So the only limitations with a flooded battery is they don't address issues like spill prevention or maintenance free as an AGM battery, but they are typically still good batteries. Most all batteries you're going to have on semi trucks are going to be flooded batteries, which are acid filled batteries. It's rare that you're going to have anyone spending a high amount of money on AGM batteries. But AGM batteries are still good batteries. We're going to still stick with the flooded batteries. So why should you get 1,000 cranking amps? What is cranking amps? So cranking amps is really critical for semi trucks, and it pretty much is it's the force that starts the truck. Cranking power, a large diesel engine needs much more torque and power to start than a car. Semi trucks typically need around 400 to 700 amps of current from a battery to turn the engine at the necessary speed, which is why heavy duty batteries with cold cranking amp ratings are used. Diesel engines have a higher compression ratio. We've mentioned this multiple times in a lot of my broadcasts. Now, we're talking about compression ratios of 16:1 to 20:1. This is very high compression. This is what helps the fuel combust, but it also means that starter has to overcome a lot of compression. This high compression ratio requires more torque from the starter motor to turn the engine. Semi-truck starter motors are designed to deliver high torque over a radius of 5 to 10 kilowatts. The motor converts electricity energy from the battery to mechanical force to rotate the engine. So, and then also when we deal with weather, in colder temperatures, the oil inside the engine becomes thicker, which increases resistance. This means even more force is needed to turn the engine over in cold weather, often requiring the battery and starter to work harder. So this is why I mentioned earlier or in the broadcast about getting ready for winter. The winter time really puts a beating on it. It creates more resistance. As I mentioned, oil gets thicker. So everything is going to cause more resistance. That more resistance is going to take more force to turn that turn that engine over. The precise amount of force required depends on the engine size. Most trucks are on the road, on semi-trucks, are going to be anywhere from 13 to 15 liters. They're going to be high compression, very large engines. That is, the displacement inside the cylinder is 13 to 15 liters. Okay, we talked on another broadcast about comparing that to a car engine, and the average car was around 1 to 2 liters. So we're talking about 15 times the size of a car engine. So the increased demand for semi-truck batteries are really more in demand than passenger car batteries. Okay, so semi-truck batteries are higher in demand because their unique requirements for heavy-duty nature for commercial vehicles. And there's several reasons why commercial batteries are more in demand than car batteries. The semi-trucks need more power, as I mentioned earlier, to support larger engine, extensive electrical systems. When you're running your heat, you're running all your different electrical, your lights. If you added lights, you're running a large load on these batteries, including your cooling system, any accessories, long-haul travel. That's why most trucks typically use 4 batteries to meet their energy needs, while cars usually only require 1. This setup is necessary to provide the cranking power for large diesel engines and maintain electrical power during extended idle periods. Semi-trucks often idle for long periods of time, powering AC systems, applications, electronics while the driver is rest or asleep. This draws battery power, making semi-truck batteries more prone to wear and needing more frequent replacement. But don't worry, I'm just giving you more of a breakdown on why these batteries are so important, but I'm also going to give you some tips on how to avoid. This is another example of an AGM battery. It's an Odyssey. These are really expensive batteries. They run around $500 to $600 a piece compared to a $200 battery. So they're going to be twice the amount. So you don't have to necessarily go to an AGM battery, but they are better than a liquid filled battery, but they are a lot more expensive. In addition to the basic vehicle functions, semi-trucks often have extra equipment like auxiliaries, APUs, GPSs, CB radios, in-cab devices that draw extra power, which that's why we need 4 batteries. And we're going to talk more about cranking and how much it actually takes, how much it also takes to turn these trucks around. The high load and demand cycle causes semi-trucks batteries to wear out faster than car batteries. Commercial truck batteries often operate daily, covering thousands of miles, leading to faster battery depletion and increased replacement rate. The need for powerful, durable batteries that can withstand heavy loads and long operating hours dries up the demand for semi-truck batteries, which you can see the demand for batteries is really high, and they only need 4 per truck. Imagine whenever they try to move over to electric trucks, and that's not going to happen. But if we're already struggling to keep 4 batteries charged, I couldn't imagine what electric trucks are going to look like. Let me adjust this chat. Got a bunch of chats coming in. I'm going to take a moment here to discuss what chat's talking about here shortly, but I still wanted to continue on. I'm going to follow up with you guys here shortly. I wanted to continue on just covering the batteries, because some batteries will last longer than others. Some batteries are cheaper than others. And that's really where the lifespan is going to make a difference. If you're going to spend money on some cheap batteries, and don't listen about going to and I'm not saying Napa's not that cheap, but there are some off-brand batteries, rebuilt batteries. Don't expect those batteries to last as long as a brand new battery. And then there's a reason why the durability or the quality of some items costs more, because they're designed to last longer. So some batteries can get wore out from vibration and wear and tear from long hauls. The impact of frequent discharging cycles due to high demand of the semi-truck system, as I mentioned, that right there is just really starts putting a kill on these batteries. Really high demand. Just just discussing these different items that I'm talking about and what these batteries are going to go and what the demand is required from these batteries, you can see why these batteries are so important and why they're one of the most important parts on a semi truck. So when we're looking at selecting the right battery, make sure you go with a name brand battery. If you want to go with the batteries that the parts house has, maybe their name brand battery or their house brand battery, those are good too. A lot of these batteries come with warranties. They come with 1-year warranty. So I recommend changing these batteries within a year, especially if you're going through extreme weather conditions, because the chemical reactions that happen inside these batteries are very affected by heat and cold weather. Extremely affected. So we're going to discuss that as well. That's the next topic. So temperature extremes. The effects of high and low temperature on battery capacity and longevity. Cold weather reduces capacity, thickens the oil, and increases demand on the starter. So if you have batteries that are already weak on their way out, cold weather will pretty much kill them the rest of the way. So hot weather increases corrosion. As I mentioned earlier, these batteries are filled with acid and water. So with heat and cold, condensation builds up, and that will cause corrosion inside the batteries. Installing batteries it seems very easy, but since there's so much electronics that are depending on your batteries, you can see that they're really buried by wires. So anytime you do a replacement on batteries, if it's your first time doing it and you're a do-it-yourselfer, make sure to, when you do remove the negative or the positive, make sure it's not hidden against anything. If you remove the positive and you still have other positives connected, make sure you're not hitting that against the frame. Anytime you're removing hardware on the battery on one of the terminals and you turn it with a wrench, make sure that wrench doesn't hit the frame, the battery case frame, anything like that is going to spark. And be sure to mark and zip tie all your cables together. There's numerous times that we've seen do-it-yourselfers. There's nothing wrong with do-it-yourselfers. There's many times that we've seen do-it-yourselfers change batteries, but fail to put all the connections back in the same place. It's not like a car. A car is only going to have two connections. These batteries are 4 batteries chained together, or they would be in sync together. They usually have a large copper bar or that goes on top, and it connects all of them together. So those can be a little bit tricky to take off. A lot of these batteries are tied down. They're strapped down. So being able to pull these out can be a little bit challenging. So if you're not familiar with replacing these batteries, they can be a little bit challenging, just to give you a heads up. As I mentioned, weather does change. Weather does affect these batteries. Now, what heat does, heat speeds up the chemical reaction inside the battery, which can lead to overcharging and evaporate the electrolytes faster. This causes the battery's internal components to wear out more quickly, reducing its overall lifespan. Heat also increases the risk of corrosion on the battery, which can interfere with power flow. So heat is a big item. All these extreme temperatures they all affect. But since we're getting into the cold weather, here. You know, this is why I have my cold weather background. Cold weather slows down the chemical reaction, reducing the battery's capacity to deliver power. It can also thicken the electrolytes just like it thickens the oil, making it harder for the battery to generate sufficient current to start the engine. Batteries that are already weakened or near the end of their lifespan often fail during cold weather because they cannot handle the increased demand. Frequent changes between hot and cold can cause condensation inside the battery, leading to corrosion. Such fluctuation may also cause the battery casing to expand and contract, which can lead to cracks or leaks. So this is when you see a swollen battery and you see how fat it gets, that's from the fluctuation in temperature. The condensation builds up inside the battery, and you can start to see it swell up. Since we're on this and we're talking about this, appreciate everyone that's joined us. I'm going to go ahead and get to your comments here shortly. I just wanted to finish up the topic on the batteries here, but appreciate keep the Keep the comments coming in, and I'll definitely get to them there shortly. So, as I mentioned, if you do have a battery that's swollen, you can tell it stinks. I know you know it stinks. You can tell by its smell. Sometimes batteries will let off this smell. Be careful with these batteries if you do decide to replace them on your own. That battery acid is very dangerous. Everything inside a battery is very toxic. So if it's spilling anything, if you look at, let me pull this up since we're on this. I want to pull up the data sheet on a battery, and this is the data sheet. Which, if you're not familiar with what a data sheet is, it's pretty much explains the chemicals involved in a battery. Now, most batteries, as I said, are wet filled. They're filled with acid. Now, if we look at the hazardous, I mean, we're looking at death, poison. Do not mess with batteries. Do not. I've had a battery. Let me tell you a story real quick. I was dealing with a car, and it was a long time ago. And of course, I had my sister trying to behind the wheel, and anytime a woman, I shouldn't say that, but anyway, I was putting on the battery, and for some reason she tried to start it while I was connecting the battery, and the battery exploded. Now, if a battery is already on its way out and it's drawing loads, there's a chance that it can explode, and you may like, oh no, that's not going to happen. Batteries on their way out can be dangerous. So check this out. This is the actual data sheet. Everything is toxic. Everything inside this battery is more toxic than your ex-girlfriend 10 times over. So do not deal with these batteries if you don't have gloves on, if you don't have eyeglasses on. If you do decide to change these batteries, make sure you're not dealing with batteries that are all already just on their way out, leaking. There are cutoff switches that you can actually cut off power to the batteries. I'm sorry, the cutoff switches are going to cut off power to the cab. There's not going to be cutoff switches to the battery. So just be very careful whenever you're taking these apart. In colder months, trucks often require more power for heaters, defrosters, and other systems, which puts additional strain on batteries, especially if they're already struggling in the cold. For trucks that operate in extreme weathers, weather resistance or high output batteries, as I mentioned, the AGM battery or gel-filled battery can help improve reliability and extend lifespan. Regular testing and maintenance before seasonal changes can also help prevent weather-related battery issues. So this is why I was bringing this up. We're right coming on this cold weather season. Cold weather, if you already have bad batteries. I had a comment on the channel. It was when I was discussing weather, and he said, hey, I've been running my same battery for 3 or 4 years, or it was at 3 years. Now, we're going to get into load testing next. So if you are worried about your batteries, and as I mentioned, changing them out once a year is what I usually see for high usage liquid filled batteries. But to avoid changing batteries that are still good, you want to load test them. Now, load testing, most shops should have load testers, and I want to discuss what load testing does. So let's get into what load testing does to the battery. There's different types of load testers. Most load testers that you want to use are going to be made for the 1,000 cranking amp capacity. Now, what's recommended is that the batteries are load tested with, let me pull this up here, are load tested with at least half the power. So if you have 1,000 cranking amps, you want to load test that up to half the load capacity of that battery. I had some images of a battery tester. There's different types out there. They make them for car batteries as well. But as I mentioned, you want to ensure that you're testing batteries with at least 1,000 cranking amps load testing. So this one here, this is a basic one that we talked about earlier. Now they make digital ones as well. I prefer digital. Digital does give you a better reading, but these types of, this one says 1,000 for 1,000 cranking amps. This is a basic one. There are digital ones. Digital ones actually, as I mentioned, are a lot better. Let's look at for a digital one. They're going to be a little bit more expensive. Now I want to discuss what load testing does. Why is load testing so important? I'm going to give you a breakdown of what load testing does. Now, if you want to look for a digital one, look for a good quality digital one. If you don't want to just go with the basic load tester, but if you're getting your truck service, either the PM or whenever you go in, ask for your batteries to be load tested. So, what does load testing do? It's very important, and we're going to talk about what load testing does. The load testing allows a technician to measure the battery's ability to maintain voltage under load. It helps prevent unexpected failures by identifying batteries with reduced capacity. So you don't want to have a hard start or a slow start when you're on the road and you're away from a shop, and now I have to schedule under a load, and now you have to schedule getting to a shop. Whenever you do that PM, you schedule that oil change, get your batteries load tested, get that checked out. There's also some apps. I saw someone share this with the channel. Thank you for sharing this with the channel. There's apps that you can use to keep up with your maintenance. And instead of just, trying to memorize it and write it all down, technology has come a long way, and applications can help you. It can help a lot. There's a lot of different apps out there. Some of your e-logs will even help you follow maintenance, but put some notes in if you don't have battery testing in there. So fleets should also do this. If you're in charge of a fleet and you notice that you're a fleet manager and you're in charge of getting these trucks, you got a load tester, $20 Harbor Freight, and shout out to Harbor Freight. Make sure it's enough for your batteries. As you can see, this is a cheap battery tester. If you don't want to buy a battery tester, then go ahead and get it done at your shop. When you load test these batteries, they have to be load tested per battery. So that means all the bar that connects all the positives together and the bar that connects all the negative together has to be removed. Everything needs to be removed, and each battery needs to be tested individually and not connected together. They don't need to be in sync. So, and now, as I mentioned earlier, be sure to mark everything. Mark everything. Get you a paint marker. Mark everything. Take a picture if it helps you. Use zip ties. Be careful whenever you're removing any positive terminals. Don't make sure you're not hitting anything. So as I mentioned, if you own a fleet, you're running a fleet, make sure to get these batteries tested. Winter time's coming around, and I can guarantee you're gonna have some trucks that die out there. There's no doubt about it. Every season, every first cold spell that hits, there's going to be a lot of trucks out there that can't get their truck started. So you still have a little bit of time before this cold weather really starts settling in. So when should you check the batteries? How often should you check the batteries? Generally, you want to check them every 3 to 6 months as part of a routine maintenance. But exact frequency can depend on your truck's usage and operating condition. Here are some guidelines to consider. As I mentioned, regular intervals is 3 to 6 months. This interval is a good standard for fleets or trucks that operate under typical conditions. Regular testing helps identify declining battery performance before it affects operation. Another good time to test batteries is after harsh weather. Extreme temperatures can strain batteries. It's a good idea to load test batteries at the start and end of winter and summer to ensure they're holding up under seasonal temperature stress. And then of course there's signs of battery weakness. If you notice any signs of weak battery, slow engine cranking, dimming lights, electrical issues, a load test can help confirm if a battery is an issue. A lot of these modern trucks have high voltage protection. Low voltage protection means if a battery is starting to get weak and the voltage is starting to drop, it will cut off different things in the truck to protect the last amount of energy that's on that battery so that you can still start that truck up. The low voltage or the low voltage disconnect is gonna sense that voltage drop. So these are just all different signs before that battery actually goes out on you. So don't ignore them. For owner operators or fleets that follow annual inspection schedules, adding a load test in these inspections can ensure your battery's performance is verified yearly at the minimum. Regular load testing helps prevent unexpected battery failure, as I mentioned, especially in vehicles with high power demand. And we're going to get into how much load these batteries actually take, how much it actually takes to turn these engines over. I got some comparison for you here shortly. It's really wild. So as I mentioned, the load test verifies the battery's condition, measuring the performance under simulated heavy load. So it simulates a starting condition. It's not just checking for voltage. Now, these are the different things this is why I like some more advanced battery testers than the regular load testers, because they all give you different things. They all give you different information. But the $20 one from Harbor Freight that Chat just mentioned, appreciate you saying that, Chat, will also work for you as well. So what the load testing does, the tested device applies a controlled heavy load to the battery, typically about half of its code cranking amps. That's why I mentioned to ensure that you get a right load tester. This simulates the power demand needed to start the engine or handle other high load draws. Now, another thing that a load test does, as the load is applied, the test measures how much battery voltage drops. For healthy batteries, the voltage should remain above a specific threshold, usually around 9 volts to 12 volts over a short period, even under the load. So what a load tester is going to do is going to load that battery and make sure it's withholding this power and it's not dropping. If it's dropping dramatically, then it's going to tell you, hey, this battery is weak and needs to be replaced. If the battery voltage drops significantly below the threshold, it indicates the battery does not have enough capacity or reserve power to handle real-world demand. So you're replicating a real-world demand with a load test. So a healthy battery should be able to maintain a voltage without any major drop. Another thing that a load test does is after the load is removed, the battery should quickly return to normal resting voltage. A slow recovery can indicate internal issues or weakened charge holding battery. So if you run a load and it takes a long time for it to recover and back to its normal resting voltage, that's another indicator you have a bad battery. Load testing provides a quick snapshot of the battery's ability to perform under stress, helping determine if it's strong enough for real life use, or if not, it may need to be replaced soon. So this is why load testing is very important. If you're concerned about maybe having a bad battery and you're worried about the season coming up and you're not ready to spend that much money on some new batteries, get it load tested to ensure that they're not going bad. If you're going to do it on your own, be sure to follow all the instructions that I mentioned. An easier way is just having a shop that already has all the equipment and experience to be able to load test this. Appreciate everyone that's joined us. I'm going to get to your comments shortly. I know they're stacking up there, but I just wanted to cover the main topics just in case anyone that's joining this live is wants to absorb this information. We're almost done. We're almost done with the batteries. But I still want to discuss more. Maybe we should go ahead and take a break here and look at what the comments have before I get too behind here. Here we go. First question: What do you do when your EGR system sounds like it has a dry tick? Is it normal? When you say dry tick, are you saying that it's sticking? Usually an EGR valve can be tested. One thing I want to mention is some tests can be intermittent. It could be a harness. A lot of times if you have issues with an after treatment system or any kind of emissions control, whether it's EGR cooler, after treatment systems, all these items eventually will need to be replaced. Even though an engine is rated at 1,000,000 miles, all these parts, most of the parts that are bolted onto the engine will need to be replaced, including EGR valves, EGR coolers, and also wiring harnesses. Now, if you have an EGR fault and you're saying that it's popping or a dry tick, you said, now there are tests that we can do to manually open and close the EGR, inspect the EGR to see if it has some soot buildup. If it has some issues with it sticking, then it's possible that, yes, it could be going out on you. One thing that we test as well, but it could be intermitting, is your wiring harness. If you have issues with the wiring harness, it could cause your EGR to act erratic. This EGR with a ticking noise, as you mentioned, a dry tick, could be something sticking, something like that. If you notice any kind of power issues or some check engine lights, any kind of indicators that kind of let the technician get a better understanding on what's going on, that would definitely help us out. How much heavier is an AGM battery versus a lead acid? Now, I don't know the actual weight on them, but I wouldn't say they're that much. I mean, honestly, a liquid filled would probably weigh a little heavier than a gel filled. So I don't, if anybody has the answer to that, I've never weighed an AGM battery versus a lead or a flooded battery, but I wouldn't think they would be a lot heavier. If anything, I think they would be lighter. Let's see. Let's see. Honestly, I think it would be lighter. Okay. I was wrong. You're right. An ANG battery are generally heavier than a traditional flooded battery. This is because AGM batteries have denser interior structure, which with more lead plates and absorbed glass mat separator that holds the electrolyte in place. This design improves durability and performance, but adds weight, especially in large applications like semi-trucks. So, yes, an AGM battery will weigh more. Appreciate that question. I'm glad I was able to answer it. Hey, the fuel leak was from the fuel rail pressure valve. Hey, King Jay's joined us again. He had he was on our last live or a couple of lives prior. If you want your comment highlighted, check out Super Chat. Super Chat will highlight the comment and I'll jump on it right away. If not, we're gonna go in line here. And if you are looking for service, be sure to give us a shout, 972-225-3017. And I want to give you a little bit of map here. Check us out, TAT Express. We're in Dallas, south of Dallas. You don't have to go into the city, which is a good thing. You can stay on the south side of Dallas. If you're coming through this area, there's a TA. Don't get service. I'm not saying go get your service done there. Those shout out to TA. No, those guys are good, but if you got any troubleshooting or any mechanical issues, that's not the spot to go. But there is a TA there. There's a racetrack, and we're just right up the street. Give us a shout. We're very close to the part houses, so we're able to turn you around very quick. Heavy duty, light duty, RVs, buses, we handle them all. So back to the questions. So King Jay, he was on one of our last broadcasts, and he said that he had a fuel fault, and he followed up. I appreciate you following up. He says the fuel leak was from the fuel rail pressure. So that code that he was having was a low fuel pressure fault. So the computer is expecting the pressure to be at a certain PSI, and it was below that. And I mentioned, hey, you may have a leak, and that's what it was. Hopefully you got it fixed. Did you get it fixed? How'd you figure it out? King Jay? Thanks for sharing that. Adam, could you please tell me what truck you have for sale? Do you have any 99 ELD trucks or any Detroit? We do have some older trucks. How can I get a hold of you? I'm going to put our email in here, and I'll have somebody contact you and let you know what we have. We do have a couple non-ELD trucks. Now, keep in mind, info@tatexpress.com. Send us your questions there, or send me your information, crypto, and then we'll go ahead and try to get you an answer. You mentioned changing the batteries yearly. How about if someone has an APU that keeps the batteries charged up all the time? Okay, so Thank you for mentioning that. An APU will charge the batteries, but you got to understand during heat conditions and cold weather and all the vibration, batteries can still wear out. Okay, so even in heat conditions, you can actually overcharge the battery. Overcharging happens. So if that can be a something to look into. Now, be sure to still in 3 to 6 months still have that battery load tested. If you want to know for sure, Savage. I'm sorry, I thought that said Savage, but if you want to know for sure, just go ahead and do load testing. That's going to give you an exact answer. You won't be guessing at it. But thank you for joining us, and appreciate you adding APUs. Some APUs actually run off a battery. I've seen battery operated APUs. They're not as popular anymore. Thermo King really took over, but I believe just because constructing these batteries and getting solid batteries made is not easy. So for us to try to change over to all electric trucks is not going to happen, especially with how hard it is to keep these batteries maintained already. We only have 4. We haven't even talked about how much power it's taken just to turn the engine over. And that's not even talking about what it's going to take to battery to pull a truck. It's going to be tons of power. Tons of power required. But yeah, APU will keep your batteries charged, but I would still do load testing because there's still a chance of a overcharge. And as I mentioned, the extreme weather is still wear on it, and so is the movement. King J said you took it to a shop. Okay. Were you in the local area, or did you take it to our shop? If not, did you get it fixed? How'd they figure it out? I have a 22 Freightliner Cascadia with the DD15. Is there an advantage to changing your after treatment filter at 400,000 miles instead of waiting until the light comes on? Do not do that. Winfred says he's got a 2022 Freightliner Cascadia. And he says it's a DD15, and he's asking if there's an advantage of changing out the filter at 400,000 miles. You're talking about the DPF filter. Yes, there is advantage, okay? I discuss this all the time. Having OEM software and access to OEM manuals gives us updated information from all the OEM. And OEM releases information periodically. And one of the bulletins did cover bacon blowing filters and getting filters changed at 400,000 miles. Now, this is all data-driven recommendations. So I would not wait until you have a check engine light, because once you have a check engine light, it is possible that you can have more issues happening. So changing out the filter at 400,000 miles, it doesn't say wait until a light comes on and then change it out. No, I would recommend replacing that filter at 400,000 miles. We have units that come in often that try to do the bacon blow. They try to prolong this filter replacement, the DPF filter replacement. All OEMs are required to replace it at 400,000 miles. Some of the data is not updated, but a DPF filter is a DPF filter. There's no difference in the one box systems that are on all these different units. So if Detroit is leading the way and saying, hey, replace these filters, and so is Volvo. Volvo also recommends replacing filters. The only one that's not asking you to replace filters besides in literature is going to be Cummins. But guys, 400,000 miles, go ahead and replace that filter. Just plan to replace that filter. If you bought a truck that's past that mileage, that's 500,000 miles, there's dealerships right now. I see it at the dealership right now at Premier. They have a whole ton of trucks. They got a lot of trucks lined up out there, and they're coming from fleets. And as I mentioned before, fleets will turn in these trucks around that 500,000 mile mark. Avoid all the maintenance because they know they're going to trade them in. The dealer gives them credit. They end up getting into newer trucks, and they reset all that interior maintenance that they have to do, replacing the filters, doing your valve adjustments, replacing a lot of the components that were designed to be replaced, filters. All these items need to be done 500,000 miles. So if you don't get it done and you prolong it, now you're looking at replacing DOCs. Now I'm placing one boxes. Eventually, the one box will need to be replaced. Like as I mentioned earlier, just because the engine is rated for 1 million miles doesn't mean that everything that's bolted on that truck is going to last 1 million miles. And also, I want to mention, if you have interior problems, if you have internal problems on that truck and you continue to push it, you're just going to continue causing more and more. You're exacerbating the problem longer, prolonging the problem. Take the responsibility. I know sometimes maybe the work might not be there, but get that truck in the shop and get it replaced and get it checked out correct and repaired, and so you're not causing more problems. Good question, Winfred. Thank you, Winfred. Thank you for joining us. No, don't just delete. That just popped up in the questions. Now, if you follow me, you already know how I feel about those. They're hack deletes. You're using modern diesel technology and using hack deletes that are putting in low. We had a video, or I just shared something earlier, is yesterday or the last broadcast, of a customer that came in with he had low power. A lot of times the low power ends up coming up, and when this happens, these are from hack deletes. Hack deletes, overfueling the system, cutting out the EGR valve, putting a tune that's just a generic tune that's not even made to help these trucks last long, and this is what you end up happening. There's just so much risk that goes into hack deletes. You're pushing more power requirements to the ECM. You're eliminating a lot of things that are in the ECM so that you don't get a check engine or a derate. And I released a short earlier today, and I was discussing the technology and the requirements that are being pushed on the manufacturers, on OEM, to create a hack-proof or a tamper-proof system. So you have the OEM creating the truck so that you cannot tamper them. You have the EPA out here cracking down on everybody that's doing deletes, or trying to find everyone that's doing deletes. So it really just creates a smaller market for it, and it's not really a trustful market. So if you have issues with your truck like this, where you have the low power complaints, and you're not able to get the power that you wanted, that you once had, and you have a scuffed cylinder, what happens when they're overfueling with these deletes? They're overfueling the cylinder, and it's not designed to run at that higher temperature. So what happens with metal? It expands, scrapes the sides of the liners, creates scuffing, and also the internal valves on the cylinder valves are not designed to run at that higher temperature, which cause them to go burnt. Cause those seals to heat up more. You lose compression. Once that happens, you're pretty much done. So it's a big gamble. But I appreciate that comment. I'm glad that you brought that up so that I can reiterate the risk of the hack deletes. But yes, I would definitely replace that filter at 400,000 miles. So the next thing I wanted to cover is their power requirements. Now, a semi truck needs why do trucks need 4 batteries? That's so many batteries. Some of you guys are already running 600 or 700 cranking amps. So say you use about a 700 cranking amps. Say you use 700 cranking amps. All right, so that's 2,800 cranking amps is what you would use on 1,000. I would always recommend 1,000 because we're already looking at these batteries taking these beatings. They're dealing with all the different environments. They get installed and ignored. You don't want to replace them very often. 1,000 cranking amps would last you probably more than a year, and most of these will have a 1-year warranty on them as well. If you don't want to replace them within a year, be sure to load test these batteries before you replace them. So as I mentioned, why do they need? Okay, starting the diesel engines requires a lot of power, more power than a gasoline engine. That's why multiple batteries are necessary. So when all the batteries are in, they're chained in together, they're tied in together. So load sharing among batteries reduces the stress on each one of them, increasing the longevity. If you ever heard 4 mines are better than 1, it's the same with batteries. 4 1,000 cranking amp batteries are stronger than just 1. It also ensures that there's enough reserve power for all the electrical system, heating, AC, GPS, as I mentioned before. A semi-truck requires around 4,000 cranking amps and it doesn't require that to turn a truck over, but it requires it to sustain the reliability of starting that truck and to support the high power demands. And here's why. As I mentioned earlier, diesel engines have high compression, 16, 20 to 1, very high compression. They're very large engines. And I already discussed the load, the electrical heaters or the heaters, the lights, electronics. Some of you guys are running too many electronics. I can't see how you can even see out the window. It looks like a Star Trek movie on the inside of your truck. I passed someone the other night on the highway. Actually, it was last night. This guy had so many lights in his truck. I swear it looked like he had a disco ball inside his truck. I'm like, how do you even see? How do you even see with all those electronics facing you? Another thing to consider is longer cables. Semi-trucks have longer battery cables, which can introduce resistance. Anytime the cables run on longer distance, so the batteries sometimes are behind the cab. They have to run from behind the cab all the way up to the starter. Now they're moving them. They're actually a lot closer, right up under the driver most of the time. So the cables are shorter. But even then, those cables create resistance, that power, and that's why higher cranking amps is better for you. So you can deliver enough power to overcome the added resistance. 4,000 cranking amp battery rating ensures your semi-truck has significant power to reliably start and operate under heavy load conditions, particularly in demanding weather and fully loaded electric system. Now, the force required to turn a diesel engine, I told you earlier, is around 400 to 700 amps initially. So factors like the engine size, oil viscosity, how cold or how hot it is outside. Cold weather is going to create that engine to turn a lot harder. Hot weather is going to make your batteries a little bit more weaker. It creates that chemical reaction inside that battery to happen a little bit faster. So both weather extremes are not healthy for the battery. That's why I always recommend 1,000 cranking amps. So let's talk about, I want to compare. Let's compare this. Let's compare, because we talk about cranking amps, we're talking about amps. Well, how does this really break down? How much power does that really take to turn over an engine? These numbers sound high, but I got a couple comparisons here for you. So as I mentioned, around 700, the force behind 700 amps to start a diesel engine. Now I want to kind of compare that to kind of break it down a little bit. First, I got a household comparison. A typical large home air conditioner draws about 20 amps at 240 amps, which is only 4,800 watts. So 700 amps is roughly equivalent to starting 35 large air conditioners at once. So that's a lot. 35 air conditioners. One air conditioner, a home air conditioner, is 20 amps to start. So we're talking about starting 35 at once, mobily. You're not even hooked up to anything. These are batteries doing it. So this is why I came up with the title of the most important part on a semi-truck. Now, many electric vehicle motors draw between 200 to 400 amps under heavy acceleration. So starting a diesel engine could take about twice the current of a Tesla accelerating at full throttle, giving a sense of just how much force it was required to turn over the massive pistons and cylinders. So it takes twice the amount of current. It states here that many electronic vehicles, many EVs, run at 200 to 400 amps at heavy acceleration. And it takes twice the amount of current to start a truck than it is on a Tesla car. Twice the current of a Tesla accelerating at full power. And they're trying to make full power or full EV trucks. It's not going to happen. Let's see if we can turn this over. Let me see how much human force it would take. Imagine trying to start the diesel engine by hand. It would take dozens of people pulling or cranking with all their strength simultaneously. That's 12 men to generate that same power. Diesel engines require a lot of compression to ignite the fuel air mixture, so they need a ton of torque to turn them on. Now, diesel engines are started by thermal combustion, so that large cylinder that's 13 to 15 liters condenses all that volume of pressure, and it condenses it so fast that it gets hot. It creates so much heat that when that injector injects fuel into the cylinder, it's so hot in there that it creates that boom. So this is the demand that batteries draw. 4 batteries can put a Tesla at full throttle. Now the last thing I want to cover is the current. 700 amps is like trying to force an immense amount of water through a hose, but instead of water, it's electricity. Just as a fire hose requires massive pressure to push water through, 700 amps requires significant electrical pressure to flow. Showing this how much power this is what I talked about, the cables going. Some cables are longer than others. That's just so much power going through there. So making sure that your grounds are good, not only on your batteries, all the connections are good, on your starter as well, on your alternator. Loose connections can cause more heat in the system and cause problems. So if you got any questions about what kind of batteries, or if you want to add on to this show, make sure to hit it up in the comments if you're watching this later. Let's get back to what chat has to say, and then we're going to wrap this show up. Hope everyone was able to pull something from this video. At the least amount, get your batteries checked at the least. Do you recommend replacing all batteries or just the batteries that fail? If you have a set of batteries that are all the same, they've been installed at the same time, and you have one that's bad, but they're all the same year model, they all same amount of time, go ahead and replace them all, Tracy. Good question. It's just like shocks. If you have one shock go bad, go ahead and replace them all. Same with batteries. If you have one battery bad, go ahead and replace them all. And now if you notice that the batteries are not the same, then maybe somebody only changed one battery, then maybe those batteries are still good. Look at the date on them as well. You usually want them around a year. You don't want them go more than a year. King J says he's in the northeast area. That's where he did his fuel test. I'm glad you were able to get that checked out. Do you recommend the DPF to be baked? No, I don't, King James. I do not recommend baking and blowing. Now, baking and blowing has been used for a really long time, and this is why it's so popular. But as I mentioned, Detroit has data driven, and I see it as well. We've baked and blown filters and put them back on, and you know, a month or two down the line, the customer's having the same problem. Now, those problems are existing because soot packing. What happens over time is the soot ends up packing tight into those channels, and baking and blowing doesn't always fix them. So what Detroit does, or a lot of OEM have done, is they're cleaning these filters, creating them to be brand new filters. They're using solutions, in-house solution, and they have really strict tests to ensure that the filter is going to be as brand new. A baking and blowing process is not going to do that. A baking and blowing process is going to go ahead and bake it, blow it, put it on a flow chart, or put it on a flow machine and see how much flow is going through it. Okay, it's good. Now, it's not going to test every single section of that filter. That's very important to check every single section of the filter because soot pack can happen. So King J, I would definitely recommend replacing the filter. Guys, replace the filters at 400,000 miles. It's going to save you some time. The baking and blowing process is not a guarantee that you're going to get all that soot out of there. The only guarantee is that getting a filter off the shelf OEM and not even deal with it no more. pushing this and prolonging it is going to cause one box issues. It's just going to cause DOC problems, and you're still going to end up just having repeat problems. And this is another reason why people want to try to go to eliminated or modifying the system, because they think that, oh, well, baking and blowing is still good and I'm still having problems. Let's just get rid of it. No, replace the filter. I do recommend replacing the filter. King James also mentions that I deleted a DD15 and it blew 3 turbos within a month after deleting it. The last turbos sucked the oil out of the engine. Wow. So this is what I mean. I appreciate you sharing that in chat. Big shout out to King J. Thank you for joining us this evening. And it really just kind of follows up behind the comment that came earlier about deleting the systems. This is why I don't recommend it. You don't hear all the bad stuff that happens with deletes. Honestly, OEM stock is the way to go. Anytime you modify something, I talked about this earlier. I talked about this in one of my last broadcasts, is when you start to modify trucks, and I mean, even with cars, you try to mod out cars, you're actually working on it more often than you would if it wasn't modded. So stock, stay OEM stock. There's going to be enough time to work on this truck later. So don't mod stuff out to make you have to work on it even more. A lot of these systems, they're not designed. The electrical systems aren't designed for modifications or adding extra stuff. It's not designed for that. So you can cause problems down the road. If you're looking for service, give us a shout. TAT Express, 972-225-3017. We specialize in OEM repair. We're not doing modifications. We're not doing this and that. We're not a flea market doing 100 different things at a shop. We focus on the main problems, the main items. OEM repairs, getting them done correctly, getting them done with OEM parts, to make sure you don't have any comebacks. We don't like comebacks. We understand comebacks happen. Trucks aren't worked on until 500,000 miles after they're assembled. So comebacks do happen, but we try to avoid them at most all calls. We try to do that. I appreciate that. Appreciate you sharing that with us. How'd the world that happen, Jay? Okay. Yeah, I know, right? Tracy, what happens is whenever the people start doing modifications on trucks, whether you're getting a small tune, there's a lot of different aftermarket tuners out there to create more power. When you start creating more power and you think you're a drag truck out there, a drag truck are these race trucks that are going down a drag strip. They're not designed to run for thousands and thousands of miles at a time. They mod them out so they can just do that whole shot and that's it. Okay, if that's all you're doing, okay, but you got to understand, even that whole shot on a modded truck, they still have stuff break. You're putting the truck through an extreme pressure. So a lot of these hack deletes, what they'll do is, now I got this power and I'm going to just put my foot in it. And this what happens. You end up destroying the engine faster. I always and I picked this up from another YouTuber, an older guy. He explained, imagine an egg between your foot and the fuel pedal, and try not to break that egg. So you want to gradually go on the fuel and you want to gradually come off of it. Too hard or too soft, or too rapidly, too hard, you're putting all this type of pressure on that turbo. You want to baby that turbo. Gradually add pressure to it, gradually take pressure from it, because when you start adding all that pressure and trying to create that pressure, that turbo is trying to push with all that exhaust pressure, is trying to spin on one side and suck air through a filter on the other side. So it's twisting. It's putting a lot of strain on that shaft of that turbo. What happens is these turbo turbines are pressed on. So it's not all just one piece. It's one piece, and then the other turbine is pressed on. So when that center that center of the turbo is being twisted either way, even when you let off the fuel, it's being twisted. So it's a lot of force going on these turbos. The turbo spins a lot faster than the engine. It spins a whole lot faster, and maybe one day we're going to discuss that. But yeah, and it's another reason why if you're running prolonged oil changes and you're not running an oil analysis and the viscosity starts to suffer, where it's the lubrication, the properties of the oil starts to lose its properties, your turbo is going to be the first thing that goes out, because the turbo spins a lot faster than the engine. I wouldn't say about 10 to 100 times faster than the engine. So it needs that oil. It's very crucial to lubricate. So if you have bad oil, a turbo is going to be the first one to go out. And yes, Tracy, those turbos ain't cheap. No turbo is cheap. I don't think I've ever seen a cheap turbo. Do you suggest the same with the DPF filter change on a PACCAR? Yes, sir, I do. If you look up PACCAR and you look up maintenance intervals on PACCAR, they also recommend replacing the DPF and not getting it bacon blown. Ace, thank you for that comment. King says his delete wasn't done right. It was the worst thing I've ever done as an owner-operator. It's a gamble. Hack deletes are a gamble. You don't know what you're going to get. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened too. But I appreciate you sharing that so that you can give other owner-operators some insight about these hack deletes. What's a good pair of shocks for a semi, and what's the average lifespan? Good question. Now, I wouldn't try to spend extra money on the high performance shocks. I would go with OEM, the same ones that you got on there. And honestly, these shocks, I'm glad you brought this up, but shocks, they're not lasting long. Some people say, hey, or they advertise a long lifespan on these shocks. Honestly, they need to be replaced after a year or within a year. Look at the roads out here. These roads are awful. And they're beating the heck out of these shocks. The shock absorber is the only thing that's absorbing all this force coming under you, all this force, and they're constantly working. I had a comment that came in the other day, and it was really interesting. He said, if you come from a long haul and you feel your shock and it's warm, that means it's working. And if it's cool, that means it's not working. So I was like, what? I looked it up, and he was right. Okay, so you got to think about it. The shock is absorbing energy from the ground. So what it does is it absorbs it through the inside of the shock, and that absorption, that energy, of course, needs to be dissipated into something, and it creates heat. So the shock is not going to be like extremely hot, but it can be warm. Keep an eye on those shocks. Make sure that they're not leaking. If you can put a hand on it, put a hand on it after a long run. Make sure they're still warm. If it's been over a year and you still have the same shocks, replace the shocks. Replace the shocks, because what it's going to do is going to wear those tires out. Once you remove the ability to absorb the shock, then all you have is an aired up tire and an aired up bag with a spring, and it ends up bouncing, creating a harder ride, and those tires start to wear off. They start to wear irregularly, and there's no way on saving them. Once they start wearing like that, there's no way on saving the tires. So definitely keep up with your shocks. I do recommend replacing them once a year. There are some aftermarket performance shocks that can last so much longer than a regular shock, but if you want to put it to the test, put it to the test. But I'm letting you know insider information that just go with a regular OEM. You're going to have to end up replacing them at least once a year, a little bit, maybe more. Check on them. Make sure to keep an eye on them. Another question, another chat here says, I'm losing coolant about a gallon every 2 weeks. Okay, that's definitely not normal. If it's not external, it's going internal. Get it checked out. If it's internal, you can definitely damage the inside of the engine, because coolant and oil, it creates it doesn't mix, so it will end up burning bearings up, creating a hot situation, scuff bearings, overheated bearings. It can definitely cause some major issues. So get that checked out, get it troubleshot correctly. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you, everyone that joined us this evening. If you're in the DFW area, be sure to hit us up, 972-225-3017. We're located just south of Dallas off of Interstate 20 and Bonneview Road. If you're at either Racetrack, which is newly built, or TA, and you're resting in that area, Flying J, we're right behind you guys. Check us out in the morning if you need some help. We can definitely get you in and out. We have all the updated equipment. We have lifts. We're able to lift your truck up. We do digital inspections, so every truck that comes in our shop gets a free digital inspection, which gets text to your phone, so you can actually see the photos and see what we see. We share everything that we find. We're very transparent in our shop. We do not hold anything back like some of the dealers do. I have seen this where dealers do hold things back from the customers. We are very transparent about everything that happens in the shop. Yeah, if you keep adding coolant, that's fine, but get it checked out. If you're losing coolant on the, do not add any stop leak. That's definitely going to damage your truck. Have to add about a gallon of coolant from time to time. Could be the turbo going bad. If yes, what is the risk of taking if you keep going a truck? If you keep driving the truck and the coolant is leaking internally, definitely can damage the engine. I mean, major damage to the engine. If it's leaking externally, you're still losing a gallon. You're losing a gallon every 2 weeks, so it's not critical. But that's still, it could be just a coolant leak. Have you got it pressurized yet to see if it's an external leak? Could be a radiator. What my concern is if you already have a consistent leak like this, the extreme weather could make it worse. And then you could either have more coolant if it is an internal leak going inside the engine, or you can risk overheating the truck. I just released a short about how modern engines are more susceptible to cracked heads because of the material they took out of the heads to keep the engines cooler or the heads cooler. So you want to be very careful on overheating these engines, because you definitely will crack the head on them. It says here, you give TAT great amount of respect for doing this show. You don't find a lot of people caring for owner operators. I appreciate that comment. And on that note, we're going to wrap up today's broadcast. I appreciate everyone that's joined us, everyone that's commented in the chat. I really appreciate everyone's support. Everyone that comments on the channel, we're working on getting to all your comments. If not, we're going to be doing lives on your comments so that you can kind of get all this information. I appreciate everyone that's joined us this evening. Thanks again. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're looking for service, give us a shout. Turn on notifications so that you're notified next time we go live, and we're going to be sharing some more information. So until next time, guys, you be safe, and we'll see you down the road.